Hey, Chris.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Just walked in the door and sitting down for a lovely meeting. Should be a good one. Hey,
Hey,
guys.
Michael. Hey, Chris. Hey, Ben.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh, Michael or Brandon or any of you, just to, because I can't remember, this is your first Columbus project, but do you have other things planned in the region?
Formally, no.
Okay.
Hopefully, yes, though. But this is the first project, though.
Okay.
Mm.
Do you have projects in other Ohio cities or you're just in Cleveland?
Just Cleveland to date.
Okay. You're not going to go build housing in the booming Youngstown market?
Probably not. I actually have looked at Youngstown for some projects. That's a challenge.
I grew up
Mi-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Michael, right after they get to the booming Canton market too.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're going to head to the booming metropolis of Mansfield and maybe Springfield.
Yeah.
I hear Dayton's coming around too.
Yeah. Well,
Don't
Columbus
forget
is.
Toledo.
Ohio only has room for one booming market, apparently.
Yeah. There's do any of you remember the episode of Parks and Recreation, when Amy Poehler's husband, I forget his name, but he talks about putting Pawnee, Indiana on the map, and he said, we could be an Akron, but with your help, we might even be a Toledo or a Dayton. And it's like, that 99.9% of America does not know the difference between Akron, Dayton, or Toledo.
Yeah.
Or all this. But then again, most people probably don't know that there's a difference between Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. It's just those three cities in Ohio that start with C. They're just probably all exactly the same.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, I've met people who've come to Columbus and they're like, oh, you guys have tall buildings. Like they literally don't think Columbus is going to have a building over 6 stories.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it's so cute there.
Yeah.
It's funny when I took some coworkers that were visiting. We have an office in the suburbs of Columbus. And when I took them into the city, we were just in the campus area, and they're like, "Oh, this is downtown." I'm like, "No, this is campus.
No.
We're still a little ways away from downtown."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, my aunt is from Toronto. That's, the other half of my family is all Canadian. And when my aunt first visited Columbus from Toronto, we were literally in the center of downtown Columbus at Broad and High. And she kind of looked around and she goes, "Downtown?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're kind of in the middle of it. That this is all it is. It's not Toronto.
No.
It's
Few-
10
few
bland
places-
office
few-
towers."
Few places are Toronto though.
Well, that's true. Yeah, Toronto is, there's about a handful of cities that match that place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite the city. Size wise.
Well, and just the urbanity of it. They changed the provincial laws in 2001 that right-sized multifamily from single family. So the provincial government basically said you can live in single family homes, but you have to pay 100% of the environmental impact cost on a single family home. And so you could get a 1,300 square foot 3-bedroom on the 45th floor, with a waterfront or skyline view for a heck of a lot less money than the same square footage would be in a single family home. And
Wow.
after the provincial government made that change, the entire metropolitan region started to go vertical. I mean, they would laugh at a 7-story building, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you go to Toronto, you go to the suburbs of Toronto, and there's 40, 50, and 60-story residential buildings going up across from shopping malls built in the 70s because they're kind of, everything has to be built on transit lines. Everything has to be integrated with transportation choice. So anyway,
Interesting.
I don't know. It doesn't look like we've got many other residents.
That's
I'm surprised
true.
there's not more.
Yeah.
I guess we can just start. It's
Well,
5:05. Should
Yeah.
we wait? I don't know if Tanya's coming or not, but I mean, I don't want to eat up more
Yeah,
of your time.
I didn't hear for her saying one way or the other. We are recording this, so in case if residents were unable to attend the second session, we will post this recording on the
Okay.
website. So I think, yeah, we should get started. And if people do trickle in later on, I'll admit them into the meeting here.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys again for your time. I know we'll jump right in. By way of reintroduction, I'm Michael Panzica, and you see my partner Russell Lamb on the screen with Blue Water Capital Partners. It's a joint venture between my company and his company. So I don't know if you guys have met Russell yet or not, but he's here and he'll be in Columbus on Wednesday as well, along with the rest of our team. And then with the Geis Companies, looks like we have Brandon Klein, who I know you guys have talked to quite a bit, and Ben Brandon, who's also been present on our side. So we have had a lot of interaction with this body, this neighborhood, formally and informally, since we first, I guess, met and had a lot of direct contact with residents to the Geis design build team, as well as the development team. We made a lot of different changes in response to some of the concerns expressed by the neighborhood that we can go through when Brandon puts or shares his screen with what he also sent through earlier today. And we think that we've addressed most of the concerns raised. There are some that, as with every development project, we can't necessarily comment on everything, but we certainly feel as though we've tried the best as we could with this project. So we remain very excited about it. We probably remain more excited about it now than we were before as it relates to some of these changes. We do feel that it's this dialogue has been incredibly helpful to improve the project as well with the community input. So we're excited about this iteration right now. And I'll let Brandon go through with some of the pretty pictures. So thank you.
And so thank you guys for taking the time. Again, also greatly appreciate accommodating schedule. And as I think I've stressed every time we've met, talked, discussed, we are very committed to this process. While we don't have a long track record in downtown Columbus, we have a very long track record with these types of organizations, and working with civic block clubs and community members. So we're very committed to continuing the dialogue, continuing this discussion. To us, it's not about just getting approval, it's about being a part of the community. And as I know we've mentioned it at multiple meetings, Michael will be the property manager of this property, so it's not just build it and walk away. This is truly meant to be a project that is held and maintained and integrated with the community. So I'll try to highlight just adjustments that we've been making. We've made a significant amount of changes to the project since even the presentation we made on the first, where I know I got to meet Lauren for the first time, and go through kind of updates, and again further iteration of our ability to work with community, work on feedback, and work with the group. So Ben, if you want to flip through this and really want to get through highlighting some of these changes, and while I highlight these changes, I'm also going to highlight the constant amount of adjustments we've made from the start when we started this interaction. One of the biggest adjustments here since the last meeting that we had on the first at that parcel commission meeting was we've, as promised, provisioned and worked out.
Right, I think we lost you.
A one-way exit. Yep, sorry. We worked out a one-way exit out onto Fifth Avenue, off of 6, to be able to get people from the development directly out to Fifth Avenue. I can tell you, and full disclosure, again, we really strongly believe in transparency and open discussion and dialogue and the collaboration. We've already received a staff letter of pushback on this potential, but it's one of those areas that we're committed to working with the Civic Association, trying to leverage maybe councilman support and other aspects to be able to get that exit way approved. Again, we will, the building can provision for it. We'll have no obstacles in the way to add that discharge or exit point. And we're committed to kind of working through that with trying to get that through the city, as requested. Again, another one of those areas where we've really tried to integrate and adjust and accommodate, comments, concerns, and questions that we've received from the community. Additionally, just some other things that we've highlighted that we've changed, through the process. All the liner units along the ground floor of the northern building, along 4th Avenue, walk-up units now there, so the parking garage is kind of concealed behind that activity. And then additionally, all the enhanced streetscape and sidewalk and walk-ups and landscaping, at multiple dimensions, ground, building foundation, and then trees and tree-lined streets here to really highlight and accentuate 4th Street and 5th Avenue. Also, one of the items that came up during the discussion on the April 1st meeting was potentially posting signage that all the apartment traffic needs to discharge out either 6th Street to 4th Street at either of the driveways. And this is a really great plan. I know that this was one of the things one of the residents actually made a little PowerPoint the last time we presented. While we were presenting, they kind of to ask questions. We did this overlay so we could kind of showcase where vehicular traffic is going, where pedestrian traffic, where trash and services are. So the blue lines would be traffic coming in and out. Again, 6th Street, it will be a 20-foot wide 2-way lane road through our site and around our site, and that vehicular traffic can flow in that manner. We have a one-way path through the ground floor parking area to then discharge at a northern exit on 4th. I'm sorry, on 4th, and then there's a new access point that, again, we're hopeful that we'll be able to get approval because we understand, the importance and significance to the neighborhood here. And then the green lines are, sidewalk, pedestrian pathway So the northern side connecting 6th Street will have 6th Street alley will have a pedestrian sidewalk, and then the whole obviously sidewalk around 4th and 5th, and then lastly there's going to be a sidewalk extension. Our building's held back pretty far from the current curb or drive lane. Again, that will be widened by about 18 inches to 2 feet from what it is today. And then furthermore, I think we have about another 6 to 7 feet from that new curb to our building that will allow for a sidewalk as well. And then lastly, one of the comments and questions that came up was utility, or I'll say services utilitarian. The red line and the red dot is the trash room with trash access for pickup day. We'll wheel it out to that striped area. It's really going to be a curb cut to be able to leave that trash in that alley like most of the residents do for pickup day, but it is not intended for a curb cut or access point. So where you see the blue lines, everything, I'll call it plan south, but I guess it's plan east. All those blue lines are where the vehiculars for the apartment would, be concentrated. And again, the intent is to not allow vehicular traffic to go up through 6 and up through Hamlet to try to alleviate the stress on the community.
Brandon,
And Ben,
yep. Can I jump in and just ask a clarifying question? You say the city staff is providing pushback with regard to that blue line that's on the top of the page center. Yep. Is it your expectation that when a vehicle heads south there that they could make either a right or a left-hand turn? That's first question. This follow-up is, does city staff have final approval, or is this something that UAC can also authorize because this exit specifically addresses resident concerns about traffic flow on Hamlet? So who has the power, I guess?
The comment comes from traffic management, city traffic management, which is a department.
Yep.
They technically have final say, but what can help, and we have provided. We've also reached out to Seth to ask for meeting notes, because at the moment I only have my notes, which it clearly calls out that this is a concern of the residents and neighborhood. But the traffic manager that we met with and had a discussion about this stated it will help the cause if we have I'll call it letter of support or letter of statement from residents stating that this is something that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And they also noted that if we could provide the UAC's transcript or meetings, that could also further dictate and help that. And then lastly, he stressed that the other option would be councilman support or councilwoman support. I'm not sure the council person in this district, but we can try to help that. And again, as I've said at that meeting on the 1st, we're very happy to be a partner in this aspect. The conversation with traffic management was us as design and development aren't going to be looked at as something that they're going to want to agree to, but resident complaints and issues typically get looked at differently.
Yep, that's very helpful. I mean, the traffic people never seem to ever want to meet with residents. They always tend to do with whatever decision is best for the highest and most efficient flow of the most number of vehicles. It's not about neighborhood quality of life. So I appreciate you sharing that, and any advocacy we can do at the neighborhood level through the civic, through the area commission to get those traffic engineers to just lay off a little bit and do something that supports the quality of life of the community would be a fight that I know many people in the neighborhood would be willing to take up in defense of making that change so it's better for people on Hamlet.
Yeah, and I want to stress, we had a very similar project. You guys had asked before we kind of got started about projects with Michael's been working on and Russell as well as a partnership, and we've had the privilege to work for them on it. We had a very similar condition or issue on a project in the Cleveland market, which we just completed about a month ago for Michael and Russell. And it was a very similar situation where the block club there adamantly wanted to see a right turn only exit out of a parking lot. And the city was absolutely adamant about, and this was City of Cleveland, but was very adamantly absent about not allowing for that because they were very concerned about, I'll call it bike and pedestrian safety for that exit and discharge. And what we stressed through the process and committed was that we would always provision for the ability to add that So in other words, I would put no utilities or anything in the way of hindering that aspect, nothing that would, not be able to add that, and make sure that it could always be added, through the process. And one of the things I'll stress is that this project is a long project. It's, a 2-year construction schedule, from our hope from today through completion, or hopefully maybe around, 26 to 27 months or so from completing this project, hopefully. And so adding that exit, can be done, through that 20-month, 24-month, 26-month process, because we're provisioning and allowing for it. I can say that the traffic managers was adamant that there was no way that they would be allowing a curb cut there to allow for a left turn out of that, just because of the safety and traffic. But maybe we'd have the objective and the ability to maybe push for a right turn only.
Thank you.
So just wanted to give that history, because I know that that was adamantly a very hot topic. And again, it's something we've really wanted to, work through with, the Civic Association, and understand and hearing the voice of concern. Unfortunately, sometimes with these types of decisions, as designers, as architects, even our civil engineer, our hands get tied with bureaucratical aspects. So, but again, we're happy to roll up our sleeves with you guys, to really push for this and accommodate it. It doesn't change our parking counts. It's just was an adjustment that we were able to accommodate, and we're happy to kind of push that forward.
Hey, Brandon, this is Tom Revo, and before we leave the traffic flow page, I was just wondering if you could go back one on the thank you, on the very north side of the project. The blue line comes from the parking garage and exits east out onto North 4th. And I was wondering, I gave someone affiliated with your group at the last meeting, the zoning commission meeting, the number, the email address to Chris Perry, who owns the properties just to the north. And he is willing to work with you to create I guess a route of egress, from 6th Avenue on that northern edge to North 4th, so that would allow more access or more exit routes to North 4th for the flow of Hamlet Street on 6th Avenue and then out, besides just going between the two buildings. Do you follow that, or?
Yes. Yeah. So in other words, being able to have a full drive from, I'll call it east and west, to the northern side of the building.
Correct. Are you able to reach him, or?
I don't think I personally got his email. Ben, I don't know if you ended up getting it.
So it's in our personal notes that reflect it, but we have not reached out yet, but we will do so.
So we absolutely can. And again, I don't think there's anything obstructing us from doing that, Michael, Russell. I mean, again, I think that's traffic management's going to have a pretty strong discussion, on this. In their opinion, when they look at trip counts and trip generation reports, this development doesn't create that much traffic and trips. And because of it, they're saying that there's no reason that, in their opinion, all of our traffic couldn't just come out the 2-lane road of 6th Avenue and go into 4th Street. And that's just a traffic management perspective. That's their opinion. I totally understand and respect that that's not everybody else's opinion.
Right, because I don't think they're current on the traffic situation at 5th and 4th. So who were you speaking with down at traffic management? Because I think it's relevant that they visit that spot at 5th and 4th and understand the traffic flow there.
I can try to pull up who we had a meeting with.
That's a very dangerous spot. And I agree that the exit out on, the southern exit out on the 5th definitely should not be a left-hand turn. It should be a right turn only. And there is already an existing curb cut there.
That was our adamant argument, because we've had other cities where if there's a curb cut present there, it becomes precedent. We got shot down with trying to utilize that as a rationale. But again, that's something we're willing to put on some armor and go to battle with, with the Civic Association to gain that support.
Sure.
And
if you just give us the name, we can reach out to the people down at the city and fight them out.
It is interesting because the city did give a vehicular exit to a building at King and High called the Verve. And that building did have a curb cut to a gravel parking lot. And they allowed them to keep that curb cut for vehicular access there, which is odd given the high volume of both vehicular and pedestrian traffic on High Street. They got their curb cut. I mean, they got their access. I think it's terrible. This is very different. And to your point, you've already got a curb cut there on that north end of the site. So I think the neighborhood would definitely do that battle for you.
It's Daniel Moorhead is who we were dealing with.
Daniel Moorhead. All right, thank you.
I wanted to say hello to everyone. I could not get on for the life of me. So I finally made it.
Thanks for joining, Tanya. I hope that answers a lot of questions on, I'll call it site circulation, logistics. Again, our team is not denying one bit that there is a traffic issue in this area and district of the city. I can say that, and we will share with this organization that we did get our formal traffic engineering report done by our third-party traffic engineer, and it came back 100% as expected. The summary of it is basically that your current level of service on the streets, that's what they refer to, streets and how they perform and how they can handle traffic, are below standard. But the comment from the engineer in that summary, and again, we'll share this formal report, is that our development has little to no impact to further diminishing the traffic, and level of service of that. And basically just some summary numbers. Our AM peak trip count is only 80 cars, and our PM hours trip count is only 118 cars. And that's over a 3-hour period in the morning and a 3-hour period in the evening. And so for traffic engineers, they look at that over a dilution of 3 hours each as a very low impact to a street. We're hopeful that the adjustments that we made to this plan can help dilute and allow for different access points for the residents to help maybe, I'll say, clean up or clear up some of the conditions that are there, or not impede the current conditions that you guys have today to allow those relief points. But I think we're trying to do everything we possibly can to not put any more burden or more hindrance on what's already a strained system. Here's some updated renderings. Ben, I don't know if you want to just kind of quickly go, kind of flip through these as we as we're kind of talking through them. But we made some pretty significant changes to the exterior from the last time. We added balconies to the building along 4th Avenue, and especially at the corner of 4th and 5th. There's a significant amount of landscape, streetscape, potential outdoor dining or outdoor patio space, outdoor areas, interaction at the sidewalk, and then the walk-up units have kind of a stooped and sidewalk connection and access point as well along 4th Avenue. Here's a shot at night. Again, exterior night lighting, is pretty important to these projects. Create a nice, safe environment, for our residents. So some nice uplighting focused at the corners, and some low lighting as far as bollard lighting at the street. Again, to create some soft ambient light at the pedestrian scale, pedestrian level as well. Next slide. And just some massing renderings of the condition. One of the conditions of the approval last, or at the meeting on the 1st, was a sun study. So we put this together for the group. Ben, I don't know if you want to just zoom into it, but basically you have full sun pretty much all day up until the evening hour. The sun path, goes over the building in a fashion that helps pretty significantly. So we did this during, I'll call it the 3 seasons. We left out winter just because sun studies in Ohio in winter just don't ever really show much of a purpose. But for the most part, from early morning sun through the day, the building is actually really well oriented. As the day goes on, we're casting a shadow over towards the 4th and 5th project as the day goes on in all of those conditions. So by about 9:15, 9:30, all the backyards that are behind us are in full sun through the entire day until about 4:45, 5 o'clock, when their own buildings start casting shadows into their own backyards. And lastly, I think we just had the elevation study just showing our development height compared to the 2 projects in direct vicinity that were all pretty much in a similar height comparison. One of the things that we show in this, 4th and 5th is 66 feet in total height. That total height is from actual finished grade, not from relationship to our building. There's almost 8.5 feet from the street to the first floor, finished floor of that building. So when you do that, they're at about 83, 84 feet themselves at the top of their parapet comparatively to our project. So it'll be a very similar height to ours, even though they're a story less, a couple stories less. We just are a little bit more compact on the lower floors than they are. And then we're pretty much the exact same height as Crossline Phase 1. So those are the updates that we have to share to the group. And we again want to state that we're working towards gaining approval from the UAC for this project to continue the path. There are a fair amount of variances that are being requested. Those variances were very much in line with all the adjacent projects that have been presented and approved in the direct vicinity of this area. But just as part of our purchase sales agreement for this property, need to kind of continue and progress those steps. But again, very committed to continuing and working with and discussing, and as I said, especially these access points, working collaboratively with your organization to be able to, I'll call it leverage the approvals needed to get the curb cuts that we're showing.
I'll jump in with a question. Brandon, thanks very much for your presentation, and thanks again for really, clearly taking into consideration our concerns and taking them seriously. So I want to acknowledge that and say appreciate it, and I know that other residents really appreciate it as well. Some of us, after the zoning meeting, some of us residents got together and did a bit more research about the upcoming changes to Columbus City Code, the zoning code. If you recall, in the zoning commission meeting, Seth was making the argument that if we didn't go with you guys, the changes to the zoning code was going to mean that the former beer barn site could be developed up to 16 stories high, et cetera. We went back and looked, and that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be that the change to the zoning code for this particular property would mean that height was limited to 5 stories, and the only way to get 7 stories would be to include 20% affordable housing units. So that seems to be what the proposal is for this area. So I know one of our residents emailed you about this earlier today. Just wondering if you guys have any thoughts on that. And if that's kind of part of the rush to get through here.
So
Oh.
I'll answer the rush. I mean, and I know that there was an email. Ashley Martin sent me an email. I was hoping she'd be on. I didn't respond because I figured we'd address this as a collaborative group tonight. I figured she would be on because she's been so vocal and present.
Yeah, she couldn't
for
make it
this.
tonight. She's working, but I can communicate to her whatever we
So
talked about.
yeah, and so I know she made a comment to us in an email. I think not this last recent email, but email before about feeling rushed and I kind of sent nicely, politely back. We've been working on this project since last summer. We've been meeting with groups and organizations within the city. There was a lot of discussion at one time trying to see if there was a potential of vacating 6th Avenue between this block to make it one consolidated, property, and then potentially creating a relief, out to 5th on the northern side and create a little bit better condition with two-way traffic through, in that aspect. And that was formally denied from the city. We were then went above with this called bridge encroachment to connect the two buildings as two separate properties. That process was successfully, submitted and received from the city. I know we've been discussing with a couple groups since then, and then I know we started interacting with you guys in the later part of January. We had tried to meet, and then Lauren, I know we've had the discussion again. Apologize for the timing, but we've been trying to work collaboratively with you guys since then. So, in our opinion, definitely not a rush. We've been trying to be very strategic, as you can see, with our responses and our ability to interact with making adjustments to you guys and for you guys, and trying to understand, I'll call it the landscape of what's important key points and what's items that might be able to be worked around. So again, we've been working through that process pretty strategically, and I'll say slow, but just trying to kind of make those discretions. And then obviously we're working towards a summer closing on the land, and getting through that process and entitlement for the summer, which this meeting starts that next big step. And then the next big step is a council hearing for the council variances. So these are kind of stepping blocks and stepping stones along that process. And so these things kind of need to start happening in action to be able to achieve, a due diligence date, for the property. So we're not by any stretch of the imagination trying to press this through to get it in before or after an old zoning or a new zoning. I will say, I believe that our initial submission to the city with our site plans would grandfather us in under the current state because we have a submitted permit number pre those zoning laws. I can stress from City of Cleveland, again, not the same city, but Cleveland and Columbus seem to act pretty quickly in the same kind of similar fashions. We have a zoning change that has been talked about for the last 3 years. They were intending to pass it last summer. It still was not passed and integrated. They're stating that it will happen by this summer. So it took almost 2 years from the time that they actually said that it was going to get passed and resolved. There was numerous amounts of slight adjustments, further adjustments, and when it got to planning commissions and stuff to get approved and council hearings to get approved, they were tinkering. So I would assume, and knowing how these form-based codes and new codes go, while they might have a final draft for review, hopefully it happens by the summer, like they're saying. But I wouldn't be surprised if it lagged and dragged. My hope is that we're well under construction, before that new code gets into place, and it has nothing to do with us trying to get in ahead of it. It's just our own timing. And then Michael, if you want to handle the
Yeah, as it
standard or-
relates, the question about affordability, this is contemplated to be a market rate development and has been from the, I guess, inception of the project relative to our due diligence and exploration surrounding the tax abatement program and the requirements, as we started exploring it. Affordable housing projects are being completed, but they are typically more incentivized by perhaps a bond fund, as I understand in Columbus, which has been formed to develop housing for a more affordable level. LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, is another tool that can be utilized, but the two are not often married in the same development. There are ways to perhaps integrate some, but as a market rate developer, generally speaking, that's not a product that we typically develop. I will say that Columbus in general, as everybody in this call knows well, has a housing shortage across the board. And there's a housing shortage not just for affordable units, but also for workforce housing, of which many of these units would qualify for rent at those levels, as well as standard market rate housing. And there's a lot of discussion around how to make housing more affordable in these growing markets. And the best answer is providing more supply. Ultimately, Columbus needs the supply, and this will contribute to that supply that will ultimately help to provide those housing units for the tremendous growth that's occurring there. It will also help to bring bodies to a neighborhood that, as I understand it, is still, below its peak population. Bodies that will patronize the restaurants and the establishments, and hopefully open new storefronts, many of which still sit vacant or have a lot of turnover. So while it's not going to be an affordable housing project specifically, it's going to help to alleviate a lot of that stress and ultimately hopefully keep housing prices at a reasonable level, along with the other supply that's coming online.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate, the impact on the market rate that adding to the supply. Although I probably could make a similar argument to what the traffic guys say, that it's a drop in the bucket. And, when we're considering this one development, it's not going to impact the market rate rent in our community, this number of units. I think the concern from the residents is still, and we completely understand that this is out of your hands, and it's not an issue that you really can do anything about. But given that it's not guaranteed that exit onto Fifth is going to be in place, I think there are still concerns about the traffic on Hamlet, just because of the very unique nature of the traffic flow along Hamlet. And as a result, the only thing, like the variance that you guys are applying for, is the density and the height variance. And that's the only thing we can kind of have any control over. So as much as we want to be working with you all on this, we've got this kind of new zoning code dangling in front of us where you wouldn't be able to get a variance to go 7 stories. So I think that's the concern that some of the residents are having still, and just to be fully transparent on our end, not clear if we will support the passage of the variance on Wednesday.
I can appreciate all your comments, Lauren. And as I said in the introduction, we have worked very hard to address the concerns and make changes where we can, and are appreciative for a lot of these changes, frankly, and so appreciative of this dialogue. There are some that, in all candor, we're never going to be able to satisfy every request. And so I appreciate all of your comments on it.
Just one point of clarification. I didn't realize that under the new zoning code, there are no variances.
That is my understanding, that the only way, if you are under the new zoning code, if you are in a 5-story zone, the only way to get additional stories is to include 20% affordable housing.
Oh, I
That
see.
is-
Okay. I got
Yeah,
it. I got
so
it.
I guess it's a variance, but it's like you have to give something up in order to get it under the new zoning code. So I believe the
Something
UAC
seems really off
meeting-
about that.
You think?
Yeah, that does not even sound logical to me.
Oh,
But anyway,
Well,
let's not talk about it now.
yeah. I
Yeah.
believe that the UAC meeting on Wednesday will begin with a presentation about the new zoning code. So if you're planning
I've
on being
been-
there for this vote,
Yeah,
then
no,
you may.
I've been to the Zone-In Gallery twice now, and I've sat through 2-hour-long presentations. And Lauren, this is the first I'm hearing kind of what you're saying, but it doesn't mean it's not true. I just
We
haven't heard
will
it. I haven't heard it yet.
We will have the City of Columbus zoning come to our April meeting. Tanya, do you know if they had confirmed that Wednesday meeting on the 24th? So I believe they'll be coming to our general civic meeting to discuss some of those changes. So we could certainly bring up some of these questions to them then to clarify. Tanya, you
I'm still
are
waiting
muted.
for a confirm.
Okay.
But I will check again.
And just sorry, one final comment to that. I mean, as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, these projects take a very long time, a lot of lead time, a lot of exploration, as you are exploring even the feasibility before a purchase contract. And so the timeline relative to the chance of zoning being passed was never contemplated. What was contemplated was the tax abatement program that it was in place or we were knowledgeable of at that time. And so we were, exploring it with compliance within that program as we understood it. So there's no way we could have forecast that this new zoning might be coming next month, might be coming next year. Like Brandon said, in Cleveland, it took 2 years to pass. We had to move with the information we had. So this is not, I can say in all seriousness and 100% honesty, that this is not, first of all, it's not a rush to begin with. We are following all the protocols we understand and it's been afforded to us, but it's not in a rush to beat a change to a zoning code. It's to comply with the rules as we were, as we understand them as set forth to us.
Yeah, thank you. I shouldn't have said rush. And yeah, we don't, it's neither here nor there whether you want to get in under old or new zoning. That's your prerogative. We're kind of just trying to understand the full set of options available to us as a community to have this development, which we do want. We do want that area to be developed, and many of us do want density there. We just want to make sure we're getting the best thing we can for our little slice of heaven we've got here.
That's so sweet. I love that you
understand.
call Hamlet heaven. It is.
I
It is
know.
a very special street.
It is very
I have to
special.
say, I love where I live, but I would trade where I live for Hamlet, south of the park.
It is a special street.
Well, it's special because the people on it have made it special. Okay.
Absolutely that. There's such neighbors. I hear such wonderful stories coming from Hamlet and the neighbors. Is our meeting?
Have
Go ahead.
any, sorry, Tanya, does anyone else have any questions that we don't need to stick around? Just thought it would be a nice opportunity to kind of walk through the changes you've made in a less pressed environment, because I know tomorrow's meeting will be very short on time.
Mhm.
Wednesday, you mean? Wednesday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Wednesday,
Okay.
yeah.
I was like, is there another meeting tomorrow? Let's do it every single day all week.
I know, you get a night off, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. All right.
I guess I just asked the question, Lauren, again.
Yeah.
I hope we've come across and have proven that we really do want to work with the residents and work with the community and work with the civic association. We are trying to do everything we can to bend but not break. And when I say break, it's just the fact that there's a tipping point where this development just can't be financed. It can't be moved forward.
Mhm.
It's just it's not in the cards.
Mhm.
And I guess again, we both were in attendance at the 4-1 meeting, where two of the commission members were kind of on the fence, feeling almost like we weren't working and interacting with you
Mhm.
guys. Um, I personally have a much stronger difference of opinion of it, that I feel like we've done everything we can to accommodate and try to work on that. Anything we can bend on, anything that we can accommodate, anything we can work with you guys on. Um, as Michael stated, the affordability component is something that just isn't able to be done at this level because it wasn't, assumed or brought, worked on the front. The last thing we want to see in this is a standstill or a situation where I'm standing at the podium next to you or Ashley or others that it's just, well, we can't do this because of this. Is there any path or any other way for us to, again, bend, but not break on your side or not break on our side, but bend to figure out how we can collectively work, and again, I think it was Tanya that said this to me the first meeting I had with Chris, Tanya, Michael, and said, what do you hope to get out of this? What are you after? What do you want? Why are you pushing to have this discussion? And I was very upfront and honest at that first meeting, as saying, well, we want your support and we want to work and collaborate with you guys. We want to make a stronger project as a group that everyone can be excited about, and be very supportive of. And the last thing I want to see on Wednesday night is a handful of residents that are standing up saying, we aren't supportive of this because of, there's too much traffic, or we're not supportive of it because we don't like the height and density. But if you can do this, is there any, so we can contemplate to be able to understand, is there anything that we can look at and have a discussion over the next couple of days, again, so that hopefully, in the old kumbaya moment here, that we can all, be hand gathered here saying, what, these guys have been great. They've worked with us. They've shown they're working with us. Again, we want to be collaboratively. I know that we've stated early on, and I know I stated at the meeting on the 4-1 that Michael and Russell have been open to hosting community meetings at this property once it's built and upstanding. And one of the items that we're building in there is a public amenity space to be able to be rented out, or I don't mean rented, I mean reserved, I should say, out to be able to host your civic association meetings, once the property's built. So again, we're really willing to roll up our sleeves to work with you guys to figure out something, but there's also, I'll call it, bank financing aspects that just aren't in the cards to make work. So I guess I'm just asking the question now with the 10 minutes we have left, if that's unfortunately for us, a break, but you say affordable, what, there's always the question of what's defined as affordable. Everybody's perspective is different. Or, is there other ways, other things that we can be a partner on or with, to be able to understand, and be able to have that dialogue. So again, I'm just trying to figure out for you a way for you to say yes and a way for you not to say no, but a way for us that we can say yes, that we aren't saying no just because the project's dead if it doesn't happen. So
Right.
again, trying to collaborate with you guys.
I do have a follow-up question on that, and Lauren might have a question as well, but either you, Brandon, or Michael, is this, when would you get financing? So as an example, the redevelopment of the old Godman Guild site was supposed to have started construction 16 months ago. And last I heard, they still have not gotten financing to build that building. How confident are you that if you get approval, you're actually going to build this building? Because what I see happening around the city is, construction permits of multifamily housing fell 19% last year across the metropolitan region, because even though there's demand for housing, these deals aren't getting financed because interest rates are so high. So are you going to build it if we say yes?
Yeah, Michael, I'm laughing because it is challenging. But also not in the business of wasting anyone's time with such efforts if we're not going to execute. And I say that knowing full well the conditions that we're in. We do have a term sheet executed. We are under, I guess, the due diligence period with our lender right now, at levels that we can accept and execute on. And so never say never, but we have, Russell and I have a pretty, very, very strong track record of executing on projects that we have proposed. And we fully intend to do that here within the timeline set forth.
Thank you.
And to that point, Michael, relative to the challenge of financing, adding nuance to a project right now is only makes financing harder. And what I'm, specific to the question about, self-imposed affordable units, that only limits really frankly, our ability with some of our lenders in this environment. And so it's a financial and financing question too. And it's very challenging right now, but there's ways to do it, and there's ways to still deliver units in a market that seriously needs them. And by that I mean Columbus. But it's anytime you add some of these unique features to it, it makes it definitely more challenging.
Yeah, just to respond, Brandon, I mean, I don't think, I can't speak for everybody, but I know personally, and I think a lot, many of us would agree that if anyone does not support you guys, it's not because we think you're doing this in bad faith or that you haven't been working with us or anything like that. So I want to just start by acknowledging, I'm very appreciative of how much you've been working with us, and I would love for you guys to be able to develop this property. And at the same time, like, given the fact that we can't ensure that Fifth Avenue exit, we are still concerned about the traffic. That means that a shorter building would be better. We also are concerned with people being priced out of our neighborhood and the kind of character of the neighborhood and the folks who are able to live here changing so rapidly with all the developments that have already happened. So it's nothing to do with you all. It's what's kind of gone on in our little fourth and fifth area over the past 5 years. And so if, I think the only points that I know the residents would probably be happy to see change on is some reduction of the density or some inclusion of affordable housing, because of the fact that seeing what the new zoning code is coming into place, that's kind of what we're thinking would be the alternative now for us, is what they're proposing for the zoning code, which would be a 5-story building or 7-story with this affordable housing. And Michael, I know I don't know how they're defining that, that's kind of up to the city. I know it's relative and et cetera, but and I also understand that it may not be possible for you all, given your the realities of your financing and what what you can take on given the current interest rates in particular. So it's not something that I'm thinking you guys aren't working with us on. It's just us considering kind of what this moment provides us versus what we would be getting if this were happening a year from now after the new zoning code was in place. And to be perfectly honest, what we would be getting looks better to us because of the fact that we cannot address that traffic issue, and because of the fact that the new zoning would require you all to kind of, give us some affordable housing in order to get the 7 stories, whereas now you're kind of getting it for nothing. So
Yeah,
those I think are the primary issues.
Oh, sorry, Lauren, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say that, again, not to repeat myself too much here, but the consideration for the new zoning was not something that was factored in our initial analysis. And so I don't want to say it's unfair to hold us to that, because I understand that it's real, but it's also, it could be real this year, it could be real next year. Like, we've all seen public bodies and how that might work. So, that's, comment there. And the other one relative, I fully understand concerns about traffic and traffic flow. But I do think that we might be minimizing the amount with which people are relying less on their cars. In cities like Columbus. And I mean, I will say that we had a very, very similar engagement on a property in Little Italy, which, for those familiar with Cleveland, is a very, I'd say, dense, very tight, very old school neighborhood, frankly. And we ended up coming to an agreement where we had provided more parking than was required by code. We leased up the building, filled it up, and less than half of the parking was leased. And, it was, within walking distance to other, sources of transportation, a bus rapid transit line, the light rail in Cleveland, there's, bike lane access, a lot of similar features that you have here in Wineland Park. And as I understand it, that other modes of transportation that are just going to continue to grow in the city of Columbus. And so I do not think that the emphasis on the automobile is as strong as is perhaps in reality of how the consumer uses it, particularly renters of these buildings. And I certainly don't think it's going to increase. If anything, it's going to decrease as more and more people are relying less and less on their car. So I completely appreciate that. It's a big consideration in neighborhoods, particularly with safety with everybody, and children, of course. But I really do think that the trend is going towards less usage for sure.
And then one more just comment to that. I understand you guys are looking at a draft copy of zoning code. In our work in 43 states across the country, I've seen a lot of draft codes be at a final draft and then get tinkered with as they get to adoption. And a lot of times, some of those, I'll say percentages, some of those, I'll call it, add-on comments of, we saw it in Cleveland just recently. Our tax abatement program completely changed last year. And it finally was, I'll call it the end of the grandfathering was January of this year. That reform or code was just constantly being changed for like 3 months leading up to that, where they were adjusting values, adjusting numbers, going from 85% tax abatement to 80% to 90%. And it was based on a lot of leverage and discussion from a lot of different shareholders. So I will say until it's adopted, it is always subject to change. So when it comes to affordability, that number could change. That could, the AMI could change, the number of percentage could change. There could be buyout clauses within there added on. So again, the grass is greener. Sometimes it changes to yellow, depending on the weather and what's going on. So again, not trying to, by any stretch of the imagination, say we're not seeing it, but it's just until it really gets adopted, you don't know how any law or code or reform is going to change until it's truly finalized. And again, we're trying to do everything we can to work with you guys and be respectful of the requests and demand. Again, I know the exit points on 4th, the additional one on 4th and 5th are very important. But I can say that the one thing we can 100% control is forcing all of our traffic out the eastern exit point on 6th, so that no one goes through Hamlet from our development.
Yeah, I appreciate all that, and I think we want to support you. There's just, we're trying to do the best thing given the uncertainty of the zoning code. I mean, same as you all are trying to do. It's just like get the best deal you can given the uncertainty that we're all facing. And yeah.
But more importantly, we have to stop letting the traffic engineers dictate our city's quality of life, because I would think that many of our things that are unpleasant about our quality of life, I would point the blame at the feet of our traffic engineering system that thinks differently than the people who live on Hamlet about cars and traffic. And it's a very, very nice thing when you have kids and scooters and balls and pets and cars in the middle of the street on Hamlet. It's a very special street because of the way everybody gets to use that. And I can clearly see why you want to protect that, because it is special. So I would absolutely commit myself to organizing people to take on traffic engineers, and whether that be at City Hall or other places, to say, look, there may be zoning issues, but when it comes down to a particular project, we have to start investing in the quality of life of neighborhoods, because if we only look at efficiency and flow, we'll lose what makes Columbus special, and Hamlet is what makes Columbus special, and we should protect that, and we should activate our voices where our voices need to be heard.
Thank you,
and beat up
Michael.
some traffic engineers. Mm.
One, Brandon, you asked like, what can you do to make it a yes? One issue that I'm just remembering, I know we're over time, but that I know came up with at least a few of the residents, and I'll just communicate it to you, was the possibility of having it, you know, stepped down to the other houses on 4th Street, even if that meant like a taller tower on the main block, right at the corner of 4th and 5th. So where you're not giving up units in total, you have an extra story in 4th and 5th, and then have some like graduation down to the
Yeah.
2-story buildings along 4th Street.
Totally understand what you're asking, and the challenge there, because I know I kind of pushed back and said losing units, and one of the commission members has got a development background, completely advocated and understood what, you know, a loss of, I'll call it 4 to 8 units does on a project, and how that changes the, you know, lost revenue, you know, from it. Even though it sounds like it's a small amount, that recurring rent monthly over the lifetime of a project is you know, pretty expensive loss of funds. But the challenge here, the reason 7 stories is so popular in these types of buildings, it has to do with construction types. And what 7 stories does is it gives you the maximum optimization of, I'll call it, a low cost construction superstructure for the height. An 8th story kicks you into high rise, which kicks you into a high rise structure, which changes the whole construction from wood frame to metal stud or concrete or steel, or mass timber, as you saw from Harbor Bay. And those come with a pretty significant price tag. So the reason you're seeing Harbor Bay going the height they're going is because once you go to 8 stories, you really almost need to go to 12 stories to make up for that construction cost escalation and aspect. You know, those are generics, but you know, the cost per square foot, you know, goes up a pretty significant amount. So you have to offset that by more density to achieve. So I wish we could, you know, easily say, yeah, no problem. We'll peel back the corner wings and we'll step and tier it like almost like a tiara or a crown, and do that. But unfortunately, it would have to be a loss on those floors, not that. And again, view I can understand, but density, or from Sun Study, when we looked at it actually as a 6-story building versus a 7-story building and a 5-story, the Sun Study didn't affect the neighborhood of residents at all, just because of the sun path going directly over the east and west, you know, the east to west aspect.
I just want to jump in and say, Lauren, you are correct. I was able to look it up and verify it. How you interpreted the zoning code currently and in the future, that was a correct. I was just not current. So thank you for that.
Okay, well, I will be sure to communicate as best I can what all was said here to the other residents. And you know, I'll definitely communicate that you guys are really working with us, and you know, yeah.
And Lauren, I will say this: over the next 2 days, again, I know everyone has day jobs. Unfortunately, after hours are a challenge over the next 2 days because of the pending travel of coming down to see you guys and present. But if there's a lunch hour, you know, tomorrow lunch hour or something that, you know, the few groups, Ashley and maybe the other few residents that are having real bad heartburn, I'm happy to have a discussion. Again, we were adamantly told at 11:15 at night at the meeting on the 1st that we better not have this interaction and dialogue publicly. So if you guys would like to further that discussion, we'll make ourselves available. We just, again, want to come to a cohesive, you know, happy place, if you will, because we really want to be your neighbor.
Lauren, if there were folks that were unable to attend tonight, we will have this recording posted on our website, so winelandpark.org. And if commissioners or other people question, you know, what was discussed, I mean, there's a public recording, so it's all in front of everyone's faces. So
perfect. I will refer everyone to the recording, and Brandon, I'll also communicate your offer to meet with us during the day for any further discussions if we folks have kind of a response or something else they would, some idea comes up.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, really appreciate everyone's time this evening.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Have a good night.
You too, thanks.
Thank you.